Hello, everybody. It is day 4 of Blazing into Summer. Can you believe that? We've had 4 amazing days already of content, and it is kicking off with a pretty big bang. We have some really great stuff to get to today. Before we get there, let's talk about where we've been, where we're going. Monday, we started off with Daniel Roth. And by the way, you can catch all of these on our YouTube channel. If you hit bang, record, and chat on Twitch, you'll get a link there. If you're on YouTube already, then you probably know where to find us. We had Daniel Roth on Monday, and he showed us what's coming up in .NET 6. Really great stuff. We talked about SignalR and built a real-time translation app with Layla Porter on Tuesday from the Layla Codes It channel. Eagle Hansen talked about his unit testing framework B-Unit on Wednesday. That was just yesterday. Today, we have Fahad here with us. You might know him as Curious Drive. He has a fantastic YouTube channel, and he's going to talk about an app that he's been building for the series that he's doing over there. Later on this afternoon, I will be on the On.NET Live channel with Cecil Phillip, and I'm going to show you how to build some Blazor components. I've got some interesting tools and tricks and tips to share with you. And then Friday, we have Fierce Kittens ending the week with some UX work that she's doing on her GiftBot app. So make sure you stay tuned in tomorrow. Let's get back to today's show, though, and I'm going to bring on Fahad, and he is here to talk about making efficient Blazor applications. You might know Fahad as Curious Drive because of his YouTube channel. Welcome, Fahad.
Hi everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Fahad. Not a whole lot of people know my name, but they call me Curious Drive. But my name is Fahad Mullaji, and I'm blazing into summer.
Love the shirt. It's so awesome. So we did some of those shirts last year. I can't remember how we gave them away, but somehow I didn't even get one. But you managed to keep yours and wear it today. That's so awesome. Thanks for doing that.
Yep.
So what are we talking about today, my friend?
So today we're going to talk about how we can use different techniques that Blazor team has given us to make faster application, how we can reduce the first load of our Blazor WebAssembly application, how we can make that smaller, and how we can make efficient applications. I've been working on this BlazingChat application for like an year now when Blazor WebAssembly was production ready in May 2020. I started working on this application, and the purpose of making this application was to create a startup template for people who are just getting started and add some features to that template so that they don't have to worry about learning those new things. They can watch the recordings, which are there on YouTube, and learn about these features which are added on these templates.
Excellent. Can't wait to see what you've got. You want to go ahead and share your screen, and I'll give you the floor. I'll be here to help with chat questions and things like that. But this show is all yours, my friend.
Thank you. Okay, people can see my screen, right?
Looks good to me.
All right. So I made some slides. I do like to make maybe a couple of slides before starting recordings or sessions. So we're going to talk about how we can build efficient apps with Blazor. Before I dive into the session, I just want to quickly talk about myself. I have 11 years of experience in .NET. I love learning about new technologies, which are Blazor is new, so I love learning about those things. And while learning those things, I have started also creating content, teaching these technologies, programming in general online. It's been a couple of years. I've started creating the content for people to get started. Started with this UI frameworks or programming languages in general. You can Google Curious Drive. You'll see my YouTube channel, or you can follow me on Twitter. The handle is curious_drive. Drive, or you can send me an email if you have any issues while watching the tutorials. When I'm not programming, I like to spend time with my family. I like to do some rock climbing. I like playing cricket, and I also love cooking Indian and Mexican food. That's all about me. Let's see what we're gonna get into today. So I kind of want to talk about. We're gonna check out Blazor WebAssembly application. And Blazor server is fine, but I personally like WebAssembly because it gives you an option to use resources on the client machine and the server machine. But that doesn't mean that we should not care about the resources which are being used on the client. The DLLs are getting pushed on the browser, .NET Runtime is running there, and we are using browser resources to perform actions in Blazor. But again, we have to think of client resources. We need to make sure that the browsers are not crashing. We need to make sure that when our clients are opening our application, their browser is not consuming a whole lot of memory. So I kind of wanted to highlight those things. For that, I'm going to cover Virtualize Component, and then I'm going to talk about lazy loading, JavaScript isolation, and I'm going to talk about CascadingValue Component, how you can make teeny tiny changes in the way you code, in the way you make these applications, and make better application, make faster applications. And towards the end, I'm gonna talk about where I learned these things, which are on Microsoft Docs. So let's first talk about Virtualize Component. Before I dive into this, I kind of wanted to talk about the application that we are going to look into. This is BlazingChat application. Like I mentioned, I have been working on this application for like a year now. The purpose of making this application was to give a template, put a template out there where there are some features added in this template, like uploading, downloading files, using these techniques to make application faster, even authentication, Twitter, Facebook, Google authentication. These are the I can log in. Hopefully that works. If I log in with Twitter, you can see I'm logged in with Twitter here. Or you can also have custom authentication with your user ID and password that you have stored in the database. So I can get into the application and John Smith gets logged in into the system. So I made few screens. I made profile screen where you can update profile information of the user, and also have contacts, which lists on all the contacts that we have for this chat application. And I have settings where you can turn on and off dark theme notifications, all that. So to check out Virtualize Component, I'm gonna talk about this contacts page. But before I click on this contacts page, I'm gonna start a timer. So I'm gonna start a timer, and let's keep this on the side here. I'm gonna start stopwatch here. So the reason why I pulled up the stopwatch is because I wanted to talk about how long it takes for contacts page to get loaded. Contacts page is loading 20,000 records. It's pulling 20,000 records from the server, and it's rendering 20,000 records on the page. So I'm going to click on contacts, then I'm going to click on start, and we'll see how long it takes to populate those records. So I'm going to click on start, and we'll see it's going to pull 20,000 records, render those 20,000 records on the page. And I haven't tested this with StreamYards, but it seems like it took 11 seconds to load 20,000 records. I'm just glad that it did not crash my machine. I was going to say bye before experimenting this, but you can see that if I scroll all the way down, there are 20,000 records which are generated, and I'm pulling these 20,000 records from the server and then rendering them on the client. These are not just generated on the client. Let's look at the code. For code, I'm gonna open my VS Code here. And this application is Blazor WebAssembly application, just like I mentioned, and it has ASP.NET Core as hosted as backend. So you'll get 3 projects. One is client, server, and then shared project. And in the client project, I'm gonna go to my contacts.razor component, and here I am looping through these contacts which are in view model. I'm using MVVM architecture for this application because I want to write minimum code on the Razor components and maximum code on something that I can inject into different UI frameworks. I'm very excited about Mavi, which is coming out in November this year. So that's the reason why I created view models. Anything that I need to present on the Razor component, I created a class for that. And I injected that class into our application so that we don't have to write a whole lot of code. So you can see that there is only 88 lines of code, and most of the code is written in this view model, which has this property contacts, and I'm looping through these contacts, which are 20,000 records, and then showing them on the page. If you look at onInitialized method of this component, then I'm calling this contacts view model, and I'm calling this method called as load all contacts demo, which is calling that web API and getting those 20,000 records. So if I go to my view model, let's check out the view model. I'm gonna open contacts view model here. And if I say, if I call this method, then you can see that there is HTTP client, which is making a call to a web API, which is getting these contacts. Let's check how long it takes for it to pull these records. For that, I'm gonna try and use this. For some reason I can't paste. My machine is kind of slow right now. Hang on. Okay. I don't know what happened there. It's back up here again. Maybe there was a network issue. Okay. So let's try to see how long it takes for it to get the records. Let me put HTTPS here. Okay, so you can see that it's still loading. It's still loading those 20,000 records. It's a web API call. You can see the tiny scroll here, and it's getting all those 20,000 records. It's taking too long. And we don't want to code like that. We don't want a user experience where a user has to wait for 11 seconds for it to load all these records. And that's why we should use Virtualize Component.
It's also a major waste of resources, bandwidth, lots of different reasons there.
Yes.
That's why I love this virtualized component. If you're doing any kind of long list, you don't want to be hammering away at your server. You also don't want to be wasting your client's bandwidth, but it's also very efficient for your UI in the application.
Yes, and this was made by an intern in Microsoft. I don't remember his name, but smart fellow. Very good component, and I personally love using it. So let's, instead of doing this, instead of waiting for 11 seconds for it to load all these records, let's go ahead and use Virtualize Component. So the first thing that I want to talk about is Virtualize Component does 2 things. The first thing is it only renders the items which are visible on the page, which you see this part of the UI. That's the only part Virtualize Component renders. It doesn't care about other records. It only cares about the records which are visible to the user. And second thing it does, it has this items provider property event handler, which you can map it to local method, which should bring only the records from the server, which should be visible to the user. So it's just not that it's rendering faster, it also giving you an event which gets triggered every time you scroll, and it only gets records which are visible to the user from the server. So we don't have to even make a call to get 20,000 records for a web API. So I'm gonna comment this for each loop. And instead of that, I'm gonna use Virtualize Component here. which has items provider property, which is mapped to this method, load only visible contacts. And I have already written this method, so I'm going to uncomment this method and talk about it. So what this method does, it first of all takes a parameter, which is items provider request. And this items provider request has two properties. One is the start index, and another is count. Start index will tell you where you should start from, where you should start pulling your records from, and count will tell you how many records you should pull. And once you have that, you can map that, you can pass that to your web API, which is going to help you only get those records, where you should start from and how many you should get. And then finally, I have this, I'm returning items provider result, which is going to give us the contacts which are getting loaded in this method. And then finally, the total count of the records. So on initialize now, we don't need to get 20,000 records. The only thing that we need to do is we need to get the count of the contact. So the only number that I need to load here is 20,000, or whatever the count of total number of records that you have in the system. If I go to view model, and then here we have this method that I'm calling here in load only visible contacts. And this method passes the start index and the count that we fetched from item provider request, and that gets passed to the web API, and then it only brings those records. So I think that's all I need to do in order to make it work faster. Let's run this and see if it works or not. If it doesn't, then it's Ed's mistake. Ed did something.
If it doesn't work, I blame JavaScript.
Blame JavaScript. I don't think there's JavaScript here. I'm going to talk a little bit about JavaScript, but there is no JavaScript for Virtualize Component. Okay, so I'm going to log out here and then log in. And before I go to my contacts page, let's reset our counter. And then I'm going to click on contacts, and then I'm going to try and click on start, and we'll see how long it takes. And boom, it did not even let me click on start. It brought the results like that. And you must be saying, okay, maybe it did not bring all the records. No, look at this. It brought all the records. You can see this tiny scroll bar. If I scroll all the way down, you can see that 19,000, I need to add one more count in it, but it's 19,999 records that it pulled from the server. Only it brought records which were visible to the user. And like I mentioned, it's using this web API. So if I go to my view model and copy this web API and paste it here, and here I'm going to say start index is from 15, and we want to get 15 records. So it's going to, let me first put HTTP here. You want to tell which server to check. So you can see that it's only it's starting from user ID 15, and then it's pulling 15 records. From 15 to 29, there will be 15 records. I'm also logging the start index and count in the browser log. So let's go to our BlazingChat here, and here I'm going to open developer console. At least I'm going to try and do that. Okay. And I'm going to go to console, and I'm going to clear this. And here you can see that as I start scrolling, then it starts logging the start index and the count. The view is fixed. This is the size of the view. That's the reason the count is staying the same, but the start index is increasing as I'm scrolling down. It's telling my website, it's telling my web API to get the records when it starts at 80, and it gets 18 records. If I start scrolling up, you can see that the start index is decreasing now. It's telling the web API that now the user is scrolling up. we know we don't need to get the start index from 80. We need to change a start index, but the count stays the same. If I decrease the size of my view and then start scrolling, then you can see the count decreases. It's telling the web API that you don't need to bring in a whole lot of items. The user has decreased the size of the view, so we can get only 15 records and be fine with it. So this is what I love about this virtualized component. It gives us the start index and count property, which helps us only bring the records that we need to bring. We don't need to bring all of the records in order to view it on the page. I also want to point out that it could get a little weird if you're not setting the height of your div tags properly. You can see that I have this item content and placeholder. I had to set this div tag of height 50 pixel. Then only it worked fine. Otherwise, it was just acting weird. If I start scrolling, it would just show loading symbol. But let's say if your web API is slower, even if you're just getting 15 records, you can use this placeholder to show user that you're loading these records, which user can't really see right now because they're getting pulled from the web API. Let's see that. For that, I'm gonna uncomment this task delay, and let's try to rerun this application.
Yeah, really glad you pointed this out. I know Jeff Fritz had an issue with this on his ClipTalk app as well. So the height really does matter, because what I believe's happening underneath the surface of that component is it's looking at your screen height, so the browser's actual visible height, and then it's dividing it amongst how many components are being shown, or can be shown at that height. So if you have, a 500 tall pixel tall window and you have 50 pixel tall components, then it knows how many of those it can display at once and when to start lazy loading. So Eagle is asking if there's a good solution for variable height content, and I don't know the answer to that one. That one might be tricky.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one either. Maybe C# Fritz might be able to help, because I learned about the struggle on his stream. I watch his streams in the morning and I watch Ed's stream. Yeah, he was struggling with it. I asked him different things to, how we can dodge that. And he said, it has to be constant at that time. But maybe he has figured out the solution for that, but I'm not really sure how we can have different heights there.
Looks like the docs say that you cannot have variable height content. I have to look at our own docs to see how we do virtualization, but we have virtualization in some of our Telerik components as well. And I don't recall hearing this problem. Doesn't mean that we don't experience the same thing, but I don't recall that being the actual issue.
Yeah.
Good stuff, though.
Yeah, I like it. There is one more problem that I've seen. So now I added 2 seconds delay when it loads the records, and that's the reason why you couldn't see it. Another problem that I saw is if I hover over these items, they get populated on a different UI, which is a little weird. I'm not really sure how to fix that problem. I need to work on it. But let's jump back to the loading symbol. This is the loading symbol that I was talking about. So if there's a delay in web API that you're calling, you can use that placeholder. And I haven't really made a beautiful template here, but you can definitely make a very shiny and good looking template to make sure that the user is happy. It knows that it's loading these items which are coming from web API. And not just like user is not getting frustrated. I really like this virtualized component because there might be some records where you don't want to add paging. I like paging, but I think it's becoming old school. I just like to keep on scrolling and seeing the content instead of clicking on numbers. But yeah, you can see that how fast this gets loaded, even if there is 2 seconds delay. Which I just added, but if you don't have that, it's going to load as many, and 20,000 is just a number. You can have as many as records because it's not really pulling all the records. It's just pulling the records which are visible to the user. So yeah, that's how you can use virtualized component. I'm gonna move on to the next one, which is
Before you move on, I just want to mention real quick, I did look it up in RDocs as well. So
yeah.
I guess it's common practice to do this division type of a thing where you check the screen height, divide the content height to find out how much you can fit on that screen. So we do the same thing. We don't have variable content in our virtualization components either.
Awesome, great. Thanks for answering that. Let's look at lazy loading. So I'm gonna log out here and then log back in here. And when I log back in, you can see this loading spinner, which is made by this gentleman who's hosting the show. It's called as Blazor Pro Spin Kit. If I open my developer tools here and go to application, and in the cache storage, if I try to look up for that DLL, you can see that DLL getting popped up in my cache storage here. And if I navigate to different pages, I'm gonna remove this delay, which is annoying me. I'll remove that the next time it loads. But when I go to profile page, it's using that package. It's using Blazor Pro Spin Kit to show that, okay, it's loading the record, please wait. And I'm using this package, Blazor Pro Spin Kit. You can find that package here. I think I added, yeah. This is Ed's GitHub account. You can find this package here. There are different spinners. And I also made a video for him for people who are just getting started with it. So, okay, fine. I'm using this package. I'm going to log out. And I'm not using this package. I'm not using this DLL on the landing page. And landing page should be very tiny. You don't want to load DLLs which you don't need them when user is on the login page. They might not even be an authorized or authenticated user to get into the system. We don't want to load DLLs for user who just wants to see the login page. So how can we not load this on the login page, but I want to load this when I navigate to the profile page, because that's where I need that DLL. So let's get into the code here, and I'm going to show you how I have added that package. If I go to my project file here, this is where I've added that package, which is Blazor Pro Spin Kit. And the way you can lazy load this is by adding this line. You can say that we would like to add a item group where I want to add a Blazor WebAssembly lazy load, which is going to include the DLL, which is associated with this package. So I'm going to add that. And the next thing that I want to do, I want to tell my Blazor application when it should load that DLL. We don't want it to never load that DLL, right? We want it to load sometimes. So I'm going to open my app.razor, which has the router component here. Router component helps you navigate between different pages in Blazor. Also, you can add additional assemblies to that, and also navigate to the pages which are associated with that assembly. So we are going to use this additional assembly, which is this lazy load assembly. It's a list of system reflection assembly. And currently it's empty. It's assigned. It has been initialized, but it hasn't been. There hasn't been anything added to this list. So what I want to do is whenever I navigate to the profile page, that's when I would like to load this DLL. And for that, I've already added a method, which is, I'm going to call it as on navigation, which takes navigation context as parameter. And this context has path. So when I navigate to the profile path, that's when I would like to load these assemblies. I don't want to load them when I'm on the login page. So if I scroll up here, I'm injecting this assembly loader, which is what I'm using here to load that assembly, which takes string array, I believe. Yeah, this takes string array where I'm passing the name of the DLL with the extension so that it could get loaded as assembly. And then I'm adding those assemblies in lazy loading, which is eventually mapped here. So one thing that I need to do here is I need to say on navigation async, I would like to call on navigation method, which is right here. So whenever we navigate anywhere, this event gets fired, and then this method will get called with this context. And whenever the path is profile, that's when we would like to load our Blazor Pro Spin Kit DL. We don't want to load that when I'm on the login page. So let's rerun this and see if that works for us or not.
This is a really cool usage for the lazy loading. So fun fact, I wrote that SpinKit library not because I needed a spinner library, but because I wanted to practice like best practices in making component packages, and I needed something I could publish.
Yeah, I really like it. I made a video about it, and there are good number of views, and people love it too. I'm not sure how many downloads you have, but whenever I need to load anything, I use this because I think it's pretty lightweight. I'm talking about lazy loading here, but I don't think this package is huge. This is just I'm using it for the demo purpose. I think this technique is very useful when you're using component libraries, especially multiple component libraries. Then you don't want to load those libraries when you're on the login page, right? You can load them whenever you absolutely need them. That makes it easier to push the application. Whenever first-time user access the application, not a whole lot of things are getting loaded for the first time, which happens for Blazor WebAssembly applications. So, okay, now I am on the login page and I'm gonna refresh, and you can see that I am in the cache storage. And whenever I look for spin kit, I don't see it because that DLL is not loaded right now. But when I log in, it will navigate to the profile page and it will load that spin kit, and then it will use that spin kit to show that spinner on the profile page. Uh, it's pretty awesome because it loads that DLL and then uses that DLL. It knows, the sequence, how it should be handling all those things. It's pretty impressive, and I really like it. So on login page, if I log out again, and then you can see that I'm force reloading the login page. So the spin kit goes away. It's not loading. The reason I'm forced reloading is because of the authentication reasons, not because I want to, but the spin kit goes away every time I reload my application. So if I'm on the profile page, then I have it, and once I navigate, when I refresh the browser, then it goes away. If I go to profile page, it comes back again. So you can do different things with this. If you have any DLL which gets loaded, which you don't need to load on the landing page, you can exclude it from your in your project file. You can mention this line, and that will get excluded when you first time load the application.
Yeah, just at a glance, I see a pretty good example there. You have a file upload on there. If you had, like, for example, a file upload component, then you're not uploading files on every page. Just put the DLLs on the page that you use it on, which I think that's built into .NET 5 now, but maybe that's not as good of an example as I thought, but used to be not built in.
Yeah, the document processing libraries could get bigger, and you don't want to use them for all the instances, right? When user is logging in into the system, it doesn't mean that they're going to use document processing libraries. They might use it, and when they might, that's when you load those DLLs. Okay. So that is lazy loading. I'm going to move on to the next thing. The next thing that I want to talk about is JavaScript isolation. And we were just talking about, I'm going to first see if my application is running or not. I'm going to rerun my application here. and we were just talking about this upload and download picture. So I'm going to log out and log back in. I like to do that a lot. So if I'm on the profile page, I have this button, which is download picture button. Now, usually when you are on some chat application, they don't have a button to download picture. But like I said, this is a demo application. This is for people who are just getting started, and then they can, use these features to get started. So I'm going to click on this download picture button. When I click on it, it downloads the profile picture on my machine. If I open it, then we can see John Smith, his big beard and all of that getting downloaded on my machine. So how is this working? If I press F12 here again and then go to sources, then I have this JavaScript folder, which is site.js. It has the site.js added in the sources, and it has this download file method. It has this JavaScript method, which is going to help us download the file. It takes MIME type, it converts the image into base64 format. It also takes the file name, and we use all these parameters to create file data URL, which we pass it to fetch API, and which will get, then we'll get a blob for that, and then we create. So you'll find this example on Stack Overflow, and I actually learned about this from Ed, who when I was working on the videos. So what this does is this creates it creates an anchor tag. It passes that blob. It also passes the MIME type, and we also pass the file name. It creates that link, and we click on that link, but the function clicks on that link, and then we remove that link because we don't need them. When we click on that link is when we download the profile picture from the server. So, but not all users are going to click on this download picture button. We don't want to. Now, this JavaScript file is tiny. It's not too big. There are only 40 lines, but you could use a JavaScript library which might be bigger, which could be 200 to 300 kilobytes. And you don't want to load them when you're loading your application. Even if you're not using this download picture button, we don't need that JavaScript, right? So how can we exclude it from initial load, or if we are not using that functionality? First thing that you need to do is I'm gonna go to my client project and go to my index.html here, and let's just remove this. We don't need to add this JavaScript file as a reference in my index.html file. And then I'm gonna open that JavaScript file and say that this function could get imported. I'm gonna add that export keyword there so that we could import this as JavaScript module and then call the methods included in that module. So if I want to call this method now, and now that I have removed the JavaScript file from here, I can use JavaScript Isolation to download that file and call that method whenever I need it. So if I go to my profile page, here I have this button. I have this button, download picture, which is calling this download profile picture. Let's try and find that. It's right here. So I was using JavaScript runtime to call that method wherever that method, when the JavaScript file was already loaded, and I could call that method. But now JavaScript file is not loaded. First thing that we need to do is first we need to import that file. So I'm going to comment this line, and first I'm going to import that file. I'm going to get that as module. And then you can use the same syntax. Here I'm using JS runtime, but you can use this module and call the same method, download file method, which is the JavaScript method, and it takes 3 parameters, which is the file type, base64 string of the base64 string of the file, and then the file name. So if I go to this JavaScript file, you can see that there are 3 parameters which it's taking. Now let's run this and see if we can avoid loading this JavaScript file when we actually load the application for the first time. So I'm going to go to my application here and log out. And if I do a hard refresh, then it removes that JavaScript file. Let's even do a clear cache. Sometimes it causes issues if your browsing history is not clear. So I'm going to clear this data so that I can say that I'm not cheating here. So you can see that I'm loading my application, but my JavaScript folder, JavaScript file is not getting loaded. Now I'm gonna log in into my application. And also this is not happening on navigation. So then also we don't have this JavaScript folder here. But look at it, whenever I click on this download picture button, then it adds that JavaScript folder, it adds that JavaScript file, and then it downloads the picture for me. So you don't need JavaScript files loaded when you load your application for the first time, or even when you're just navigating in the application, you don't need to have those JavaScript files sitting there. You can absolutely, when you click them and need them, that's when you can load them, and which is like a tiny file which is coming from the Blazor WebAssembly from the server, and then that gets loaded, and then we can use the JavaScript file for executing functions like downloading files and everything. So
this is one of my favorite features that came in .NET 5. It just made working with JavaScript libraries so much easier, and they did it by leveraging a native browser API that you can call import. And you can do this outside of Blazor as well. So you just call import through the browser, and you can do this. And they just kind of wired that up through Blazor, so you can do it in Blazor too. And I just find it so simple and easy. Love it.
Yeah, all of these techniques, like the list that I've put it out here, these are not difficult to use. Maybe Virtualize Component could get a little tricky when it comes to setting the height and everything, but all of these techniques are very easy to use in your application, and that could improve the performance of the application immensely. So I really like using them, and I like talking about them. So yeah, I love it.
We had a question like way earlier, and I didn't want to spoil anything in case you were going to talk about it. But somebody was asking, can you do theme detection in Blazor? And it's done very much the same way as the example we just saw, but it's using the media query API.
Yes, correct. So I did want to show that, but it wasn't going to fit in this demo. But I'll talk about it a little bit and see maybe if it fits in the demo or not. It won't work because JavaScript file is not added, but hang on. Let me try it and see if it works or not. So yeah, it's not working for some reason, but I'll talk about it. So if I go to my settings page, here I have this method. Whenever this switch changes, I'm calling this update method. And if I go to update method, here also I'm using JavaScript isolation to import that site.js, and then calling this set theme method. And if you go to my site.js, here I have this set theme method, which is adding a new link, which is going to be a theme which will be passed from the client, and then removing the theme which is already there, and then adding that link in my head tag on the index page. So if I go to my index.html, here you can see that there are two CSS files here. One is for app-light.css and app-dark.css. And I have added those CSS files here. And dark shows the dark colors, and app light shows the light colors. It's not working right now because I've set up this demo to show these topics, but it definitely works. I have made a video about it on YouTube channel. You should check it out.
So we'll have to get together on that one and revisit it, Fahad. They have added APIs to Blazor for manipulating the head of the document. So we
Oh.
don't even need JavaScript at all for that anymore. And you could actually use Blazor size to detect the user's theme, because all Blazor size does is gives you a media query, and those media queries can target the user's light and dark themes and tell you
Awesome.
which one they're using. So we can get rid of all the JavaScript, and I just haven't written it yet because there were still people using .NET 3, and I didn't want to leave them out. So I need to
Yeah.
write some new demos on that.
Yeah, once I posted the video about dark and light theme on YouTube, there were a few comments in the YouTube channel. They're like, you can do this with C#. You don't have to do this with JavaScript. So when I say that, I make videos, I actually make them so that I can learn from you guys. That's all it is. But it's just fun making these videos and talking about these things. And yeah, definitely we should get together and use media queries from C# and get rid of all the JavaScript because it's not for us. Okay, so where we were on JavaScript isolation. So that's how you can, remove the JavaScript files when you load your application. You don't need them when you are just whenever you're not using that parameter, whenever you're not using that feature. Okay, so that's all about JavaScript isolation. The next thing that I want to talk about is CascadingValue Component. Before I talk about where it is, I want to throw a couple of exceptions and see what happens. For that, I'm gonna go to my contacts.razor component here, and whenever I'm initializing the component, let's throw a new index out of range exception, and on settings page, I want to throw a null reference exception. So there are two exceptions happening on the application now. One is on the contacts page and another is on the settings page. Let's run this and see how it looks. I'm gonna go to my application here. I'm gonna get some warnings because I'm throwing errors and not handling them. And let's log out so that we could get the latest bits. And then I'm gonna log in into my application. It's gonna load the profile page. We are not throwing any exception on the profile page. But if I go to contacts page, then you can see that it throws this exception. It says, oops, something has gone wrong. Please check your logs. This notification is made by Chris Sainty. He is awesome. He writes amazing blogs, gives insight of Blazor. So if you haven't checked his blogs, his Twitter and GitHub account, please go ahead and check. I can share the link here. This is Blazor Toast, which I'm using in my application. And there are so many other toasts that he has, very easy to use. Please go ahead and check it out. So what exactly is happening? How I'm able to show these messages when I'm just throwing exception and we're not seeing that yellow bar? What's exactly happening? So I'm gonna talk about the settings page first, and then it'll make sense in the contacts page. So whenever I'm throwing the exception, I'm using try and catch block, and then I'm handling the exception and passing this exception in this error process error method. And what this error is nothing but a cascading parameter, which is coming from somewhere in the parent component. We don't know yet. So where is it coming from? For that, I'm gonna go to my app.razor component and see how my app is wrapped around and how is it getting handled, which component is sending that cascading parameter. And I see this error component here. Error component, it looks like error components what's handling these exceptions, and it's handling globally. You don't have to repeat your code whenever any exception happens on these methods. So let's take a look at how error component is written. For that, I'm going to open my shared folder here and go to error component. And here you can see that we are using this cascading value component, and the value which we would like to pass to the child content is this. This means the current component that we have. That's what we would like to pass, so that when the child receives that as a cascading parameter, we can use that to call process error, which is the method which I have written here. So anything which is happening in the child components that could get handled in the parent component. We are passing this, and this will get called whenever there is an exception, and we're handling this exception. We're handling this exception and processing it. And it also gives us a one-point entry where you can hook up your logger, where you can inject your logger, depending on what kind of logger do you have. I log my exceptions in database. I'm going to open DB Viewer here. I hope it doesn't take a whole lot of time to open, but I'm using this logger, and this logger logs the exceptions in the database. So if I go to my server project here, then you can see that I have added providers, application providers, and I'm passing DB context and everything here in order to log these exceptions in the database. And it has opened my DB viewer, and the exceptions are getting logged in this database. So if I refresh this, then you can see that these errors are getting populated right now. So this is the current time here, and that's what's getting logged in my database. So when I push this application to production and an exception happens, I can check out these exceptions in the database. That's about logging. But let's go back to cascading value. So with cascading value, we could send the current component, the error component, to our child component. And the child component could call the method which was written in the parent component, which is fine. But what Blazor does, Blazor also creates a subscription to all the child components which are wrapped around this parent component. That means if there is a property in your parent component and you want to use that in your child component, if you want to get populated, if you want it to get populated for all the components which are wrapped around, then you can use cascading value for that. But if you are not using that, then you don't need to create that subscription. That subscription is very expensive. And depending on how big your application is, if you have like 500 components, then it's going to create a subscription for all these components. And we don't want that. We want to not create that component. We want to create we would like to just pass it as parameter. We don't want to create that subscription, which doesn't really help us, right? So the very easy thing to do here is you can just say that is fixed, which is by default set to false, and you can set it to true. And that should pass your error component, this component, as just parameter, not cascading parameter. And it will not create that subscription, which is heavy and which slows down the machine on the browser side. It doesn't really have an effect. I can't really show you like how big the performance difference was, but these are the kind of teeny tiny things that you want to do in your application to make sure that you're not using these components to their full extent if you don't need them to be. So if I'm just gonna go back and show you that the application still works, but I don't know how to show you the performance difference, honestly. I'm gonna try and log out here. My machine is struggling here. Okay, let's log out. It still hasn't run. Give it a minute.
I just wanted to give you a heads up at the time too. You said you had a hard out at the top of the hour. Got about
yes,
3 minutes left here.
That's okay. The meeting is not at 12. It's at 12:30, so we'll be all right.
Okay, you just let me know if you need to stop. Okay.
Yeah. And this is more fun actually. So I'm gonna. Okay, so finally our application is running. I'm gonna I'm gonna log out and log back in.
A real quick question while that reloads. Does an exception on a component stop the rendering of other components within the same page? If it is a critical exception, yes, it will. It will stop the whole app. There are new things in .NET 6 to help with this, but the best practice is to try to trap those errors just like any other application and display a meaningful message to your users before it gets to that extent.
Yeah.
Great question, Frank.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about error boundaries in a minute here. When I go to context page, you can see that exception being handled and a nice toast message is being shown. And if I go back to my database and refresh this data set, then you can see that the errors are still getting logged in my database. So it did not have any bad effect on our logic if we use is fixed. With that, I'm gonna move back to my slides. So these are the techniques that I talked about. I would also recommend to check out this link where I learn all these things. If I go to ASP.NET Core Blazor WebAssembly Performance Best Practices. It's a big article. It's written by .NET team, and I like checking out. There are, like I said, there are small things that you do for your application. They make the big differences. I also want to thank Chris Sainty, who wrote this blog to explain how cascading values and cascading parameters are, how those work, and how we can use isFix to make the performance faster. So those are the best practices. Next thing I want to talk about is what's new in .NET 6. .NET 6 is getting released in November. I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited about Blazor Hybrid App. So what I want to do is I want to convert my BlazingChat application to Blazor Hybrid application. And Dan Roth, I think on day one, he showed this Blazor Weather app. I'm gonna pull that up on Dan Roth's Blazor Weather, where we have a Mavi app and we have Blazor Server app. That is a Razor class library, which you can add reference to Mavi and Server. So that's what I love about Blazor. It's like you write a component once and you can run it anywhere that you like. That's the best thing about Blazor. So please go ahead and check out this this repo. This is what I want to do with BlazingChat. And also, the new thing which is coming out is .NET Hot Reload, and this is just not for Blazor WebAssembly or Server. It's actually across other UI frameworks too. That is coming in November. Error boundaries. We had a question before here. How can we handle particular component? If there is an error happening in particular component, we don't want to stop the whole application. So you can use error boundaries if there are exceptions which are happening in particular component, and you just want to show error message for that particular component and not stop the whole application. Then you can use error boundaries for that. We also have WebAssembly ahead of time compilation coming out in November, where you can publish your application as ahead of time compilation. It increases the performance. It makes the performance very fast. Actually, Steve Sanderson, he made a app which is called as Picture Fixer, and Dan Roth did talk about this app on day one here on Blazing into Summer. So please check this out too. These apps are made by legends, so I highly recommend you should check them out. State persistent too. So if you want to make a Blazor WebAssembly application which you want to have which works with search engine optimization too, you can do that too. They have done something with the state persistent, which I still need to explore. I don't know much about it, but I'm very excited to check that out. With that, thank you for having me. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Twitter. Use this hashtag if you have questions, particularly about BlazingChat, but you can reach out to me for any questions, not personal questions, only Blazor questions. You can also send me an email on curiousdrive@gmail.com. If you want to check out my YouTube channel, it's YouTube/C/Curious Drive. We are closing on 10,000 subscribers. So give it a follow. It makes me smile. And if you go to my GitHub account, for some reason, it's not working right now.
Just hit remind me later, it'll jump through it.
Okay. Remind me later. Maybe, I don't know why that popped up. But yeah, so the BlazingChat application is here. There are two branches, one I created for this demo, but there is this main branch that I've been working on for like a year now and making videos about them. I also have source code by episode. So if you go to Blazor WebAssembly tutorial, you'll see there are 31 videos here. And for each video, I have kept the source code separately. So if you get stuck on a particular episode, you can refer to the code for that episode. I also have a Blazor server application, which I'm calling as bookstores. So if you want to learn about Blazor server, you can check out this series, Blazor C# tutorials. There also we have 30 episodes, and also have bookstores web API where I'm using Entity Framework Core. So if anybody wants to learn about Entity Framework Core, they can check out that repo too. With that, I would like to take some questions, some easy questions.
And I'm putting your links into chat for folks as well, so
Thank
they
you.
can find your YouTube and your projects. Last chance to get those questions in. Everybody was saying what a great job you're doing. I have to agree. This is great information. I will probably be circling back and watching this myself again, because I definitely need to try out the virtualized component myself. I've seen it in action. I just haven't actually used it. So something I need to tinker with. So I'll probably use this as a reference.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to tinker it with for a little bit, but it just works when you have the height right. It's not that difficult to use virtualized components.
Question from Ancient Coder. He's noticed you weren't on Twitch anymore. I don't know if you wanted to share anything about that or not.
Okay, Asian Coder. I think I'm gonna. I'm not enjoying streaming lately, so I don't think I'm a streamer. That's the conclusion that I came to. So I'm not gonna be streaming going forward. I'm gonna be writing blogs, and I'm gonna be making videos, but streaming, maybe not. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit before the show, and I said I agree, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Not everybody gets the same kind of reaction out of doing these live streams. But you're a great presenter, so I will give you that, and I would say keep doing live presentations. When things get back in person, I would recommend a conference or two in your future. Just my 2 cents, and see if you enjoy that.
I loved doing this. This was awesome. When you asked me, I was like, yeah, that's no brainer. I'm going to do this. I just had to clear a few things on my calendar and make sure that I'm going to do this.
Well, it was great having you, and you did a fantastic job, my friend. Today's winner of the prize drawing is Tom. So I got this wrong the last few days. We are sending out emails, but they are coming at the end of the week. So if you haven't seen your email in your inbox yet, if you're a prize winner, then give it a couple more days. We should have those in there tomorrow. So I think today's prize is a $50 gift card. So Tom, check your inbox tomorrow, see if we got that email to you. We are putting everybody in a drawing as well. If you signed up at the link I posted in chat a few times, that there is a Nintendo Switch to be won as well. So make sure you get that done. If you didn't win today, don't hesitate to still put your name in the hat for that. So I'll pop that in chat one more time for folks. And later this afternoon, I will be on the on.net Live channel. I'm going to talk about building Blazor components. I'm still, this is kind of the nature of live streaming. I'm still debating on whether I'm going to use some new .NET 6 features in this. So depending on how much time I have, I may just go straight .NET 6 and hope that all the demo gods have been appeased and let things work properly.
Yeah, I did not. I wanted to show a few things related to .NET 6. I have installed the preview version, and I do have the Blazor weather app that Dan has worked on, and I've run it on Android and the Blazor server application. But I did not want to take a risk of presenting that here.
Yeah, I've had issues. A lot of them I think are user error. To be honest, I may have goofed a few things. Some of them were some Visual Studio quirks too. I think I mentioned this on Dan's show, but I don't know if I put it in full context. So on the last Friday show, if you're tuning into that, I had an issue with like none of the tooling working in Visual Studio. So like I had no IntelliSense, it didn't recognize components. Turns out if you have a global.json file at the root level and then a different global.json file at the project level, Visual Studio takes the root level one. And that one was .NET 5 and the project level one was .NET 6. So none of the tooling knew how to compile anything. So I reported the issue to the Visual Studio team so they could take a look at it. But there are, there are things that are going to happen. These are bleeding edge bits. So tune in at 4:40 today and see what I end up trying and failing at.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Awesome. Well, it was great having you, and I appreciate you carving out a little bit of time for us today to share some of your experience with Blazor. Again, like all of the topics you picked are absolutely fantastic ones that I hear questions about all the time. So I will be referring people back here. Matter of fact, I was in Twitter as you're doing one of them because somebody asked me about cascading parameters in Twitter this morning. And when I saw you talking about it, I was marking the time for them to come back and watch it later. So hopefully they circle back and check that out, learn something new, and helps them out.
Thank you.
So thank you once again, and I will hopefully see some of you this afternoon, 4:40 Eastern Standard Time. So I know some of the European audience, it may be a little late for you. I understand. I won't hold it against you. If you're on Eastern or Pacific time, maybe not so much lenience. I might not forgive you all for that one, but hopefully we'll see it a little bit. And then Friday, of course, we have the fantastic Fierce Kittens, a master of many things. I don't know if you've all seen the Fierce Kittens channel, but she does like 3D printing and crocheting and sewing and just all sorts of creative stuff. And she does software development and does Blazor. And she's going to be on Friday to show us some Blazor stuff. So fantastic personality, to a Twitch personality. She's done some fabulous stuff on her channel. Make sure you go back and watch some of her past content as well. And tune in tomorrow to see her live here on Code It Live. So it'll be fun time. Any last words, Fahad?
Nothing. Just check out these different techniques. I'll be making more videos on Blazor. There are so many nice things coming out in .NET 6, especially Maui. So I want to convert this BlazingChat app into a mobile app which runs on iOS. It runs on Windows desktop application and Android. So that's the plan that I have. So yeah, stay tuned, and hopefully I can deliver that. Let's see.
Awesome. Can't wait. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you later, either later today or tomorrow. Blazing into Summer's been fantastic so far. We've got a love the shirt. We've got a Nintendo Switch to give away sometime tomorrow as well. So tune in for that too. And one more time, thank you, Mr. Curious Drive.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.